Hello, Yingcheng. Hello, Yingcheng. Welcome back.
Hi, can you hear me? Is that clear?
Yeah, crystal clear. Could you share your slide so that we can be ready in a couple of minutes?
Sure. Let me check. Share screen. So
perfect. Yep,
it's good.
I can see. Yep. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Happy to share my work and talk with you.
Maybe I think like we wait for a couple of minutes for everyone to join. Yeah, I think like I see Aristra is here, James is here, David is here, Yanis is here. Yeah, I think Grace is joined. I think one more minute, then we can start rolling. Yeah. Hi, Grace. So anyone else? I think that's all, right? Okay, so we can start now. So so thank you everyone for joining the data science seminar series today. So today we have Dr. Yingcheng Sun. Yingcheng Sun received his PhD degree in computer science from K Western Reserve University, and currently as postdoc researcher scientist at the Department of Biomedical Informatics at Columbia University in New York City. So Dr. Sun's research interest includes intelligent information retrieval, NLP, and applies machine learning with application in clinical informatics, with more than 20 papers published as top venues, such as the Journal of American Medical Informatics Associations. So welcome, and the podium is yours.
Thank you for your nice introduction. Hi, and hi everyone. I'm Yingcheng Sun from Columbia University. I'm very happy to have this talk at NJIT and share my work about evidence-based medicine. My research interests include information retrieval and machine learning. So in a few topics like topic modeling, query understanding, spam review detection, and system performance optimization, and also in clinical informatics. So in this talk, I will focus on my work in clinical informatics in the following three topics. I will briefly introduce the background and discuss my work on optimizing clinical trial eligibility criteria design, improving the search of clinical trials, and evidence computation and retrieval, and with the future plan. So first, evidence-based medicine. So it is a model aims to use the current best evidence in making decisions about the care of individual patients. It is very important in healthcare environment to achieve improved quality and patient satisfaction. So I think everybody use evidence during make decisions, right? Decision making. So it is same in healthcare. So in clinical field, the evidence might be classified into different levels. So normal experience, opinions, or analysis could be evidence. But highest level or the highest quality medical evidence, they come from randomized controlled trials. So after being praised and after systematic review by clinicians or researchers, those evidence could be used in healthcare. So in this talk, I would just use trials or clinical trials instead of this long name, randomized control trials, referring to the RCT. And so the question is how to generate those high quality evidence. The entire process will be a little complex, but it has three main very important steps. So first is the trial design. Investigators need to develop appropriate eligibility criteria for participants, for volunteers. So it includes some rules. For example, for the COVID-19 disease, the investigators might be interested in a group of patients between 40 to 60 years old, and they might have some other disease or diabetes or other kind of disease. So that's the rules. We call them eligibility criteria. So when designing a clinical trial, you need to specify those rules clearly. The second is about recruitment. So the investigators need to find and connect with the patients who are eligible for the trial. So it would be great for the trial enrollment if volunteers can easily find the trials by themselves. And the third step, after the clinical trial, after the experiment, the results will be published as evidence in clinical literature. This literature will be reviewed by clinicians or researchers for evidence appraisal or synthesis. And clinicians can find answers for some clinical questions like this. During this process, there are at least two very important challenges. One is the information overload. So in clinicaltrials.gov, this is the biggest website for clinical trials. So almost all clinical trials in the United States need to be registered here. Every year there are a large number of trials registered here, and also the results after clinical trials, the results will be published as clinical literature. And in this website, PubMed, which is also a famous clinical database in the United States, I think across the whole world, there are large numbers of clinical trial articles published. And the second challenge comes from the human language itself. Because those data, most of the data are free text data. Text data. So a couple of models are developed using artificial intelligence methods to help the process automatically and try to reduce the information overload. This is there are a lot of natural language processing jobs, but the nature of human language makes this task very hard. For example, in this sentence, exclude patients and actual treatment with other potential disease-modifying drugs of AD. The AD here can be interpreted into different diseases, like Alzheimer's disease or adrenal adenoma. So even with context, there's no artificial intelligence system can understand the human language correctly every time with 100% precision. So this ambiguity and imprecise characteristics of human language makes the machine learning based system very hard. to achieve satisfactory performance. So instead of using AI that tries to replace human, augmented intelligence that assists human in decision making is more practical at the current stage. So in my research, I try to use this kind of idea, augmented human intelligence for decision making and to solve these problems. And augmented intelligence, it is a design pattern for human-centered partnership model of humans. We can think of it as a telescope, right? To assist humans, the people and the AI working together to enhance cognitive performance. So the key idea is to make them work together. So first, I will discuss this this augmented intelligence in optimizing clinical trial eligibility criteria design. When designing a clinical trial, overly restrictive eligibility criteria may lead to the delay or failure of recruitment because there might be no enough patients, no enough participants. Too broad eligibility criteria, too broad rules may also not good because it will impair the homogeneity of a study population. So we need to optimize the clinical trial design with the best choice of eligibility criteria, right? So prior work, so like GIST, GIST 2.0, ACT, and LEAF, and some other work, they use electronic health records to estimate the potential cohort before the start of the trial. To estimate the eligibility criteria, whether it's good or whether it's too narrative or too broad. So this is a good idea. It can avoid a lot of cost and avoid the failure of the trial. So, but the thing is, they need manually query the database for cohort discovery, and it will cost too much labor to create a query, to create such a complex query, because sometimes the rules might be very complex. So usually there will be like 20 to even 100 rules for one clinical trial. So generating such kind of query will take too much labor and also easy to make mistakes. And the second limitation is they only use one or two evaluation metrics. So sometimes there will be bias, and I think, so our work is trying to overcome the limitations of prior work and to promote to improve the clinical trial eligibility criteria optimization. In my work, I developed an end-to-end analytical framework for eligibility criteria optimization using the EHR database. So first, it recognizes named entities and attributes from free text eligibility criteria. Next, all entities are mapped to standard medical concepts and their attributes. Also, the attributes are normalized with lower and upper bounds, and the entire process follows a warm-up common data model. A warm-up common data model is you can think it as a vocabulary, a dictionary, or a sort of ontology. So it defines the standard concepts and their relationships. So we follow this model. A similar model is called UMLS. So you can choose any kind of model. So we follow the model for concept normalization. And next, we provide an editable user interface for users to review and update parsing results. Because sometimes this named entity recognition and the normalization process will have errors, will have limitations. And then the executable query is generated to identify patient cohort from EHR database. Finally, given the cohort, the patient data, we use diverse metrics to evaluate this cohort. So from here to here, so with those kind of those results, I mean those quantitative results, the users can easily evaluate whether their clinical trial is good or not, as good design or bad design. So to be specific, let's go deep into the first step. Given a free text criteria, so how to do the natural language processing job. So we need to identify all the entities and their types. For example, the BMI, we identify it as a measurement entity, and 18 to 30, it is a value attribute, and similar to all other entities and attributes. So currently, the best natural language processing model is a transformer architecture-based deep learning model. And the most popular pre-trained transformer models are mostly Sesame Street family, from the Sesame Street family, like BERT, Big Bird, YAML, those NLP models. And so for this task, for our task, I chose BERT for its relatively better performance. But actually, no matter what transformer model you choose or you use, the most important thing is how you make the model adapted to your problem. BERT is pre-trained on a large corpus, but not for clinical trial eligibility criteria. So for clinical trials, we need the model adaptable to our problem. So how to do this? To improve its performance, we randomly selected 1,000 clinical trials and annotated them to create a corpus called CHAIR. And then we use transfer learning method to fine-tune the BERT model with this corpus. And we obtained the alpha score as 0.88, so which is higher than the vanilla BERT, and the vanilla BERT will get around 0.7 score for FI. And the next step, the temporal and the value attributes are normalized with the minimum and maximum values. So all entities are mapped to standard concepts following the WMOX-EM combinatorial model, as I mentioned before. For example, the mechanically ventilated this entity will be mapped to artificial respiration, because artificial respiration is a standard concept in the combinatorial model. So why we do this? Because this will increase the recall when querying patients. So both the query and the patient data using the same concept, you will easily find the targets. So that's why we do this normalization process. For temporal value and concept normalization, we use a rule-based method. So I will not go too many details here. They can achieve, they are fast and can achieve pretty good results. But for concept normalization, it is a little hard to achieve very high precision or recall. This is the hardest problem here, because from entity to standard concept, there's no there will be a lot of errors or limitations here. So I think this is the problem here in this pipeline. Still need to be further improved. But for other process, and even including the negation normalization, for example, we need to identify the negation queue here and the negation scope here, and we need to know that this not refers to the drug, this drug. We can achieve like 0.963 precision using the NACBERT. So with this NLP pipeline, we passed more than 350,000 trials and created a clinical trial knowledge base called CTKB for knowledge discovery. This knowledge base will be also used later for our research. We can see that each NLP task cannot achieve 100% precision, right? It still needs human intervention to obtain high quality results, especially in clinical settings. So we developed an editable user interface for interactive review and modification for criteria parsing results before querying the database. So here is a short video. For example, if you think this concept adenoma is not correct, mapped to AD, mapped from AD is not correct, you can manually update here. Here it is changed to Alzheimer's disease. And you can change its domain. If you think here means the entity, you can add it manually here, and you can also choose its domain. And you can also clear the annotations very easily. So I worked on this interactive user interface to provide like editable results for users. After getting the cohort from the EHR database, so we assess their characteristics using different metrics to optimize our eligibility criteria design. So let's look at this part. So what metrics we're going to choose? After discussing with two doctors, I choose 4 metrics. The quality means the cohort size, and demographics. It includes age, gender, race, and ethnicity of patient cohort. Safety includes 2 metrics, the CCI score and the risk ratio. The CCI score is a 10-year survival rate in patients with multiple comorbidities. And the risk ratio evaluates the risk of adverse events. So we also use the correlation score as one metric. This correlation score is called GIST. It includes MGIST and SGIST scores. So this scores from our previously published paper in 2016. So what does correlation mean? Means the intuition here is more correlated criteria will categorize a clearer cohort profile. And such criteria will have better generalizability. So users can, or investigators can adjust the criteria to optimize them. So users can easily find the cohort or the group of patients in like real world if the criteria are strongly correlated. And so here, with those metrics, the users can check whether their eligibility criteria are good or not good. But I'm thinking that this is still a try-error process. So if the metrics, the scores tell you that the eligibility criteria is too narrative, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna update them? I mean, try and see the results again, right? It still has a lot of work, costs a lot of labor. So I'm thinking, can we provide actionable knowledge to reduce the labor? So I'm using these metrics and try to develop a recommendation model to recommend the best criteria candidate to users using our CTKB knowledge base, the clinical trial knowledge base. So based on the user's targets, for example, one kind of disease, COVID-19 or heart disease or diabetes, and we will recommend the new criteria based on these four metrics. So how to recommend? So it's based on the scores, like means like the quantity, the larger quantity, the better. I mean, the more patients eligible for this criteria, the better. And for demographics, the more diverse, the better. The safety, the higher CCA score means the higher survival rate, the better. The lower risk ratio, the better. Yeah, and the correlation, of course, the higher correlation rate is the better. We recommend the new criteria based on those four metrics. And for demographics, we allow users to assign the initial distribution. And if user assign the initial distribution for age, gender, and race and ethnicity, like here is about 45% male and 55% female, we will recommend new criteria, mostly close to the initial distribution. If not, the default recommendation will be randomized and will be like as diverse as better. We have done many evaluations for this framework, and we even work with doctors and like 20 clinician experts to evaluate the system. And interesting, I will not go too many details here, so the evaluations are all in the paper, but I would like to introduce one interesting example, I mean, during the evaluation. It is, we worked with 3 investigators from Columbia University in a clinical trial design using the system. The trial is about stroke, and we worked together, and we found a few parts, and I found those parts can be simplified or relaxed when querying the patient cohort. So for this trial, for example, information about research activity authorization can be omitted from data queries. So that's very helpful for the clinical trial design. And next, I will discuss my work in clinical trial retrieval. More than 11,000 clinical trials are published every year, and they need a lot of volunteers to participate. But only 40% of patients feel confident in funding an eligible clinical trial. Why? Because for keyword-based search, the results are just too many. The system usually return too many irrelevant results. And for like questionnaire-based clinical trial search system, the questionnaire, the question list will be very long with many inapplicable questions. For example, this questionnaire, I call it a static questionnaire. There may be too many questions. Maybe after answering 6 or 7 questions, there are only one eligible trial left, or even no eligible trial left. So the participants don't have to answer all the questions. So I developed a dynamic questionnaire. The question candidate list can be dynamically updated with user answers, and ineligible trials will be removed in the trial candidate pool. So like this, the users will need to answer less questions. But here is for this system, this kind of dynamic questionnaire system. So how to generate those questions, like when were you first diagnosed, and have you had the respiratory failure, those questions. So manual generation will take too much efforts, because sometimes those questions, there will be a lot of questions, like 100 or 200 questions. So I developed a pipeline for this process. Given eligible criteria, similarly, free text, we first do the natural language named entity recognition job to identify the entities and their types. Also, we need normalization for the identified entities. Different from previous work, the first problem I discussed before. Here, I use a question template for different types of entities. There are different types of question templates. For example, for condition, we have you ever been diagnosed with this condition? For drug, are you currently taking drug? With this template, we can generate questions like, have you ever been diagnosed with cough? Are you currently taking hydrochloroquine? So those questions can be automatically generated. Here is a similar problem to like previous work, to my first task. So how do you do this named entity recognition? Yes, I agree. Sometimes there's no perfect model here, and especially for at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, there's no corpus or language model that fits this problem. So I developed a semi-automatic eligibility criteria annotation framework to annotate a corpus called COVID with 700 COVID-19 trials and a lot of entities and attributes to train our NER model, for named entity recognition. This is an active learning process. So after annotation, a batch of trials after annotating a batch of trials, the model will be retrained for this process. And okay, with a corpus and with a framework, with idea, we developed a dynamic questionnaire called COVID-19 Trial Founder. So it is based on a previous system called dQuest. We created an updated system. I mean, this is this COVID-19 Trial Founder. So the extracted criteria will be verified by domain experts and then imported to a database. And users will search eligible trials based on interactive interface with like visualization features, visualization models. And this is a short introduction. This some screenshots of our system. After being released in 2020 May, more than like 1,200 users visited our website. We are very happy to provide help. And the simulation studies in finding eligible trials for 20 user cases shows that the system can improve the efficiency by filtering around 35% irrelevant trials with a precision around 80%. So the incorrect results come from the granularity. Some trials in our list, they look for like specific group of patients. For example, the patients must be a licensed mental health care provider. It must be employed by a specific hospital. So they're very fine, very detailed requirements for some trials. For such kind of trials, we may not filter them based on this system. But we will improve in the future. So here a similar question to me. So can we do it better? Can we provide, actionable knowledge to users? So suppose that if users already know a trial, but the recruitment site is too far away, it is closed, or the trial, already full of eligible patients, eligible participants. Can we recommend more trials to the users, more similar trials to users based on the given trial? So to solve this problem, I worked with a doctor and extracted 13 features from clinical trials, such as a study type, masking phase, and study period, location, and some free text features. And I developed 4 different types of metrics to measure the similarity. And I also developed an interactive interface for users to set weights for all features. And based on the feature and the metrics, we can do the content-based trial retrieval, trial recommendation. So here I just see something about the distance part, because this is an important feature for participants. So no people want to fly or travel a long distance to attend a trial. If some trial is just within a few miles, that would be great for them to participate. So I developed a metric here so it shows that the longer the distance, the lower score, the shorter distance, the higher score. Within one specific distance, like a short distance, like 10 miles or 20 miles, there's no difference. So I also developed a system to help users during the COVID-19 pandemic, and so I evaluate the system with 3 systematic reviews for this simulation study, simulation evaluation. So my system can achieve like average of 0.85 F1 score. By the way, the system called COVID-19 trial measure, and it has been published, and it is available online. This is a publication. So the final task is about medical evidence retrieval and synthesize. And I so develop a medical evidence computation and a retrieval framework for this topic. So the challenge here is clinical trial results are reported in the literature in free text format. This unstructured data makes it very hard for large-scale evidence appraisal and synthesize. So prior work has 2 lines. One is to manual synthesize, or to encourage people to report the clinical trial, the results in a structured format in some platforms. But this is very hard to scale. How can you manually report, manually input medical evidence like for 100 or 1,000 articles, right? And the second line of work is using machine learning methods to automatically recognize medical evidence. One is to one is about automatic medical evidence entity recognition. But this kind of work is able to locate the primary evidence conclusions. The other kind of work, machine learning-based evidence assertion inference, using like deep learning methods, this kind of work lacks enough explainability. So here I develop a multi-level, actually 3-level computable representation model for medical evidence representation. First, I represent the main medical evidence elements here. The participant, intervention, comparison, outcome, observation. Those are key. Those are medical evidence elements. Based on those elements, I infer the meaningful assertions from and so here I call it a medical evidence proposition, like from which intervention, given a drug or some method, and what's the observation and on its outcome, and given the identified those inferred medical evidence propositions, we can construct a map like here to provide users a systematic representation of each clinical article. Here I show an example. So given such kind of article, given this article, so I will finally provide a map to users the clinicians or researchers can grasp the whole idea, the main idea of this article very quickly. But not only this map, I also provide the details, why this, how the map is generated from medical evidence elements to medical evidence propositions. One line is proposition. And then the system provides enough explainability, enough details to the users. So here is a pipeline. So use transfer learning. Here I worked with 2 doctors to create a corpus with 310 articles and fine-tune a deep learning model called Bluebird. This Bluebird is pre-trained with PubMed articles, and then we generate a fine-tuned Bluebird model. So for all free text evidence articles, our clinical articles, here we do the natural language processing job, including NER, proposition inference, proposition clustering, and negation detection, and then generated structured evidence results. Here, to accelerate the process called each article is very short. I concatenate. So I combined a group of articles, do the batch-based learning, and then the performance will be improved. So the results will be indexed by a Solr database. So I develop an interface for users to retrieve those evidence. The users can ask clinical questions or use the pickle-based pickle-based query for evidence searching. A little bit details about the evidence proposition inference. So given the free text sentence, given the free text evidence, we identify those entities here, different types, and infer their dependency, and then combine them together to generate medical evidence proposition. One line is was one proposition. So how to generate a graph? I mean this map. Here I use embedding method to embed the intervention concept, intervention entities, and find similar intervention entities and group them together. So here is a clustering job. And then after clustering, we can get this map. The performance, let's say here, we can achieve like 0.88 performance with for the end-to-end evaluation. And compared to other systems, so this system have more features to provide different types of query and more types of result presentation, more features. And also we achieved better performance, better results in terms of recall and precision. So here is a brief introduction of the interface here. This system has already been developed and it's ready to publish very soon. Future plan. First, I will continue my work on medical evidence computation for clinical decision support. I will use the current structured clinical literature database to build an evidence graph to help clinicians, help doctors find drugs or find medications more conveniently. And also, I'm working with PubMed team. PubMed is a biggest biomedical literature database. They provide me some search engine logs to train my information retrieval framework. The second plan is about the multimodal clinical information theory management and retrieval. So I have experience in developing a multimodal data acquisition and retrieval system. So my previous work is for intensive care unit. I would like to continue this line of work in building a multimodal theory model and a multimodal training model. So I'd like to thank you for all my colleagues and mentors from Columbia University, Boston Children's Hospital, NIH, PubMed team, and Case Western Reserve University. And thank you, everybody. That's the end of my talk.
Yeah, thank you very much for your talk, Yingcheng. Very interesting. Everyone, do we have any question for Yingcheng? Audience.
Check. Yeah, welcome to ask questions. I like to help. I like to answer any questions.
Jim, you are muted, Jim.
Hi, Dr. Geller.
How about now? How about now?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, great. So as you know, we're hiring into a data science department. So I think you should explain how large the data is that you're actually working with in your research, that this is non-trivial data.
So thank you, Dr. Geller. This is a great question. Let me explain. So the data I'm working with is actually very large, including like 300,000 clinical trials and like millions of clinical literature, clinical articles, and also tons of electronic health records. That's the data I'm working with. I'm trying to deal with. So yeah, it's a big data.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
So obviously you didn't use the whole PubMed with what 30 million publications or something. How did you actually sample how did you choose what you were using, right? And what was left over?
Yes, this is a great question. So for my research, I focus on the random control trials articles, like here. So not all the articles, like for reviews or for like non-random RCT articles are not our target in this stage. After filtering out irrelevant articles to our study, there might be still 500,000 articles left. I think they're all about random controlled trials results reports. I see there's a question in the chat. Professor Hu says 2 issues: assessment of trial results that depend on the system, such as Bayesian analysis, and how does a bias enter into those considerations. So could you clarify the assessment of results? What kind of results? All the systems. So.
Yeah, maybe Dr. Silverman, could you please ask the questions directly?
I'm glad to see if I can help on this question. This seems a very interesting system for evaluating what I sense to be abductive information. That is to say, overall, some action, some medical action might be taken as a result of these considerations. Is that true? You're not just collecting data for the purpose of collecting data.
Yes, some
Okay.
medical actions are related to our system, right?
So we have a problem of abductive issues, which are don't always conform to reality. That is to say, there's distortion, there's bias of some kind. Sometimes subsequently, a Bayesian analysis, for example, might be performed on this particular structure to determine what worked or what didn't work, or what was left out or what was considered. Is that any built into the system in some way? In other words, I'm concerned about the possibility of bias that creeps into the structure. What you've described is a reasonable deterministic way of arriving at these the data set, so to speak. But the question is, how ultimately reliable can the medical field depend on this? That's basically the question. Or what kind? Well, has this been tested in any sense? I'm not sure. It may have been, but I didn't see that in your proposals.
Oh, so thank you, Dr. Silverman. So your question is asking about the bias of the system. So I think I would like to see there are some limitations of the pipeline, the automatic pipeline from clinical trial eligibility criteria to queries, because during this process we rely on machine learning models, rely on natural language models. The model itself may not achieve 100% precision. So here we allow our target users like clinicians or researchers to modify the results based on their expertise, based on their knowledge, so to overcome this limitation generated by the machine learning model. So I think this can be a good option for this framework and to overcome any kind of limitation. But the review and update could include some bias. That's for example, some doctor with not enough experience, without enough so any bias knowledge. So the query, the results will be not appropriate. We have some issues. So I agree. So the evaluation, we have done a lot of evaluations for all the systems, including these systems and let me check. And this system, we evaluate the accuracy of recall and FS score and the usability of the system. But again, the people who evaluate our system are like a group of clinicians, a group of experts. They might have their preference, so they might have different backgrounds. So that could be a bias. But we in the future we will encourage more people to evaluate the system, to evaluate the results. I think the bias or any kind of bias will be overcome.
This is extremely interesting because what you're presenting is a result of, this is not pejorative, this is meant to be complimentary, that there's a natural evolution of technology. And in some sense, I'm interested in the history because some prior individuals don't receive adequate identification as to who started these things. Are you familiar with the work of David Baltimore and the expert systems for that he developed in medicine back in the 50s, I think, or a little bit later? You know what the work of David Baltimore? He won a Nobel Prize, not for that, but he was an instigator in this concept of expert advice, which seems to me an important evolutionary mechanism that you've described here, and which is very extremely interesting.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Silverman. I have not worked with David Baltimore, but I would like to discuss with you after the talk and for more details about the expert system. That's I agree. This is an interesting topic.
Yeah,
I want to be present when you are awarded a Nobel Prize.
Oh, thank you. That's thank you for.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. I think it's triggered lots of discussion topics. So if we don't have any other questions, I think Yingcheng, you have upcoming interview, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So thank you everyone for joining us today. So see you in the next series. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.